NewFields Ag. With us this morning is Josh O'Brien. He joined YieldMaster Solutions in the fall of 2019 as an account executive. Since then, he has moved into the national sales manager position, responsible for sales across North America, industry partnerships, and the YMS distributor account network. When not on the road educating farmers about the YMS product line, Josh works from his office in Minneapolis, which I believe is where he is today. This morning, Josh will present on a new and exciting product called NutriPhi. It's out in the field. Research has been done, and guys are actually using it. But it is relatively new, so we wanted to get on a webinar and talk a little bit more about it because I believe we have some results back from some of our research. After this presentation, we will also have a short presentation from Eric McRae, senior lender with First Mid Bank, on the cost of money and then we'll talk about some of the great cash flow programs that NewFields Ag is offering on our products for the 24 cropping season. With that, we welcome Josh. Thanks for joining again this morning. Take it away.
Bob, thank you very much. Thank you, NewFields Ag, and thank you everyone that joined this morning to hear about our product NutriPhi. So as Bob mentioned, I am Josh O'Brien, the National Sales Manager for YieldMaster Solutions. And Bob, just do a quick check to make sure you can see my screen.
Yep, looks good.
Perfect. All right. So for those of you, most people on this call have heard of YieldMaster Solutions at this point. But if you have not heard of us, we bring biological products to the market through our proof of concept trials, and as well as making sure we vet out any and all new technology that we sell. So NutriPhi is a product that we've had our eye on for a few years now, and the time just seemed right to bring it on here in 2023 with a lot of the opportunities that we saw in the market there. So today's presentation will kind of break into two different parts. We're going to talk a little bit about residue management of crop residue. That'll be where we start. And then we are going to then shift gears the last 10-15 minutes or so and talk about the ability of NutriPhi to handle manure management and organic waste management. So that'll be kind of the breakout of the two sections today. And if you have questions, please type them in the chat box. Take yourself off mute. Be happy to answer those questions as we go. Okay, so first I'd like to start with what is residue management, right? Because that means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And I'm not saying my definition is right, wrong, or indifferent, but these are some of the things that I look at when I focus on residue management. So in my opinion, it's any process designed to expedite the digestion of a remaining crop residue after harvest. Why it's important? Crop residue can tie up important nutrients needed for the following season's crop, right? We know there's particularly a lot of P and K in stock residue for the following season that needs to be broken down and needs to be released back to that next year's crop. The other thing is that crop residue works as a little bit of a pathogen hotel, for lack of a better term, for harboring a lot of these pathogens for the next season as well, right? We know that if we can't get rid of our residue in a timely manner, the opportunity for pathogens to reside there and show their ugly face the following season certainly goes up over the course year to year. And then the other thing is excess carbon, which, you know, most crop residue, that's all it is. It's just organic carbon. Excess carbon has a negative impact on the availability of nitrogen. So not only is it stealing holding up last year's nutrient profile that you're trying to get back into the soil, when you put additional nitrogen down, that organic carbon steals that nitrogen away and it uses it to break down that crop residue for the following season. If any of you have been around composting, you know that there's a critical C to N, or carbon to nitrogen ratio, that is ideal for digesting down organic carbon, and crop residue is no different. So we're going to be robbing any additional nitrogen we're putting down on that next season's crop as well, when we have quite a bit of residue left over in the field. So a lot of people think about the carbon digestion side of residue management, which is extremely important. But the other part that maybe we don't spend a lot of time thinking or talking about is the ability and the importance of chemical residue or salt residue as well, and just how important that is to the next season's crop or to our long-term viability of the acre that we're growing. So that's kind of some of the things that we're going to be talking about today is with many of these herbicides and insecticides and fungicides that are difficult to break down and they have a negative impact on the soil diversity. How can we help out that field, that soil, that plant, all of those things to make sure we don't feel the negative impacts as much with the crop residue left over from prior years. So that brings us to our product. We have a product called NutriPhi. And NutriPhi, the bacteria within NutriPhi can remediate various chemical residue that hinder beneficial bacteria growth and therefore can assist in the regeneration of positive microbial colonies, right? So that's the key to all of this is how do we make sure that our positive microbial colonies continue to thrive and continue to be active? Because one of the things when it comes to biologicals or microbials in general is you got to think about it like a community. And if you have a community of, say in our world, if we have a 2,000 person town and 1,900 of those people are firefighters, we have a really safe town when it comes to having a fire, right? But we also know that we got to have some teachers, we got to have some police officers, we got to have accountants, we got to have, manual labor workers. We got to have all of these things that really make an economy thrive or make a community thrive. And the same is true for the soil. We can't allow it to get overwhelmed by one type of bacteria. That's really not a good situation. And when we have some of this herbicide residue and chemical residue that may have a larger impact on some of the beneficial bacteria than it does the negative bacteria, we want to make sure that we can try to balance that equation out as best as possible. So NutriPhi bacteria can also aid in the decomposing of organic carbon while converting phosphorus and potassium in that organic carbon to more usable forms quicker. So some of the benefits of the NutriPhi bacteria are that it degrades aromatic chemicals found in agriculture pesticides and heavy metals such as chromium. So we can actually start to break down some of that leftover residue, some of that leftover polymers, some of that leftover petroleum byproducts that are going to reside in your soils for a long period of time. We have bacteria that can help break those down. It can help decompose manure and plant residue, which converts organic nutrients into soluble, usable plant nutrients, right? So when you go out and you spread, whether it be your bed packing from your beef lot, or whether it be your manure that you're spreading onto your field, we can help that manure or that pack get broken down quicker and be available to be utilized by the plant more efficiently long term. We can solubilize the phosphates and mineralize potassium, making them more available for plant uptake. And then we can start to degrade some of the atrazine herbicide residue. Some pesticides and herbicides persist in soils, which can affect crop/plant production, right? So bioremediation practices and all of these types of things are becoming a lot more popular and a lot more common in real world ag today. And then we do have some nitrogen fixing bacteria in here as well. So whether you're putting down organic waste such as manure and you want to make sure that you can fixate as much of that as possible, or if you're just trying to capitalize on some of the atmospheric nitrogen that's already in the soil, we have nitrogen fixer bacteria in this product as well that the following season are going to play a big role in availability. So here's the hard part, is how do you put a value on a crop residue product? There's a few of them out there in the market today, and that's the challenge to the farmer, is to say, I really think there's something to this. I just don't know how to put a dollar and cents value to what I'm getting back out of spending the money here, and how do I make sure that my return on investment is what it needs to be. So we did some research over in Nebraska there, looking at corn residue, treated and untreated with the NutriPhi product. And it was applied after harvest, right around this time of year, November 1st. And they went out, and this independent group measured the amount of residue in that field each month from November 1st through April 1st. And what they found was that using the NutriPhi product resulted in about a 25% less residue in the field compared to the control throughout the course of that fall, winter, early spring period, gearing up for that corn planting time that following season. So 25% less residue. Now that sounds really intriguing, but what does that mean, right? Because even there, okay, 25% less residue, what does that mean for in terms of dollars and cents to me as I move forward into the following cropping season? Well, this is from Michigan State University. So this looks at the amount of remaining nutrients that are still in crop residue the following season, right? So if you look at corn stover, if you grow 200 bushel corn, you have approximately 100 pounds of nitrogen, 50 pounds of phosphorus, and 210 pounds of potassium that are tied up in that crop residue, right? So a significant amount of NP and K is still tied up in that crop residue for the following year. Now, as we look at return on investment with our product, if we can eliminate 25% of that residue and convert it back to the soil to be available for the following season's crop, what does that look like? Well, it's approximately 25 pounds of nitrogen, 12.5 pounds of phosphorus, and 52.5 pounds of potassium that we have released back into the soil to be utilized for that following season's crop, assuming that you grow about a 200 bushel an acre crop there. So that's one way to start putting a value to these residue management products. Now, there's a lot of other anecdotal things that we don't, calculate into this ROI model that we'll talk about here in a little bit. But for you guys that are very analytical and you want to see the ROI scratched out on paper, that's a really nice way of looking at it.
Hey,
So,
Josh,
yeah, go ahead.
a quick question. So, like no-till guys, this is going to be huge for.
Yep.
Are we seeing better benefits when we do some tillage where we're burying some of that after we sprayed it and then burying the residue, or have we looked at that?
You're going to get a faster digestion by burying it because you're getting the benefit of not only our bacteria and microbial community, but the natural microflora that already exists in the soil. Plus, you're also getting, a little bit more insulated temperatures where that digestion process is going to continue longer throughout the fall and into the winter, and then it'll activate sooner in the spring. So, yes, you probably will see an expedited digestion process when you bury it and after you spray it. However, you hit the nail on the head. There are a lot of guys these days that are moving away from tillage practices into no-till or minimum till practices where this is going to be a big opportunity for them. And if you've talked to anybody that's done no-till, one of the first things they'll tell you is, yeah, we've experienced a bit of a yield drag the first few years because our carbon to nitrogen ratio it gets out of whack because we just have so much carbon left on top of that field that it's stealing the nitrogen away from the following season's crop. So absolutely, I think you hit the nail on the head for these no-till guys. It's going to be a big play for them as we move forward.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Okay, so I focused the first section here on the carbon side, right, which is extremely important. But I want to shift gears a little bit and start talking a little bit more about the second part of this, which is going to be more of the chemical residue, right, that's left over that maybe we don't focus on as much when we're looking at residue management. So as we look at NutriPhi and how it could potentially help with some of the chemical residue, here's two examples of what we're looking at, right? So, we have one of the common herbicide residues, herbicides out there is Stinger and Curtail. And according to them, the only way that is degraded in the soil is entirely by microbial metabolism, right? So we have to have a population in that soil that degrades it, or basically digests that chemical molecule down When it releases it back out the back end of the bug, it goes to a different form of a fatty acid. Then another bacteria then comes and digests it down, and it ultimately, over the course of 6 or 7 or 8 iterations, you break that molecule down into just a fatty acid that becomes very simple to digest by the bugs. That does naturally happen in our soil. Don't panic and say, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that I'm loading my soil up with chemical every year, and now all of a sudden I'm going to have a big issue on my hands after 20 years of farming. No, that's not real world. But what happens is, with modern day farming and how much we're pushing our yields and trying to get better and feed the population, we are starting to put down some levels of chemical that the natural microflora just has a hard time keeping up with. So you're not going to get this massive compounding effect, but you do get a little bit of carryover left over in the soil. And when you start getting a little bit of carryover of anything, that's when you start to run into resistance problems, right? You start to see a little bit of glyphosate, for example. We've all started to hear a little bit about glyphosate resistance starting to come up. Well, some of that happens when guys go cheap and they don't use the full rate of glyphosate, and we don't get a good kill off, and all of a sudden we have some residue left in the field. But some of it happens just by that building up effect of having it year after year after year in our soils. Naturally, some resistance starts to happen, because anything that's done at a half rate is susceptible to that resistance. So think about us when we take antibiotics, and the doctors always tell us, make sure you always finish your full dose of antibiotics, because if you don't, your body starts to build up a resistance to that partial dose that you've had. Soil is no different. Weeds are no different, right? If they start getting used to a lower dose of glyphosate and they start building a resistance, at some point the normal rate of glyphosate no longer works. So what we want to do is make sure we can degrade out some of that leftover chemical from the soil to not allow that weed or that weed pressure to start building that resistance to some of the lower levels of chemical that's left there in the soil year after year. The other part of it that when I think about remediation and I think about residue management, that certain parts of the country maybe are well aware of, is salt, right? Salt is a big issue for a lot of guys. And with the conditions that we've had over the past 2 to 3 years, particularly in the upper Midwest, with how dry it's been, it's becoming worse. Those of you that do center pivots, you know that you get a salt buildup, after a lot of years of center pivots. Those of you that put a lot of manure down, there's a lot of salt in manure, right? Salt is not friendly to the plant. The plant does not like salt, right? So how do we help with that? Because it's a pretty daunting problem on its surface. How do we handle salt buildup? Well, with NutriPhi and even NutriQuire, our other product, these bacteria have the ability to create a glomalin, which is like a glue. And that glue will bind to a salt particle. And what happens then is it allows that salt particle to get pushed deeper down every time we get a rain, or you run your center pivot, or we get a snow melt, or any kind of moisture that field gets. That glomalin attaches to the sodium molecule. Then we're able to push it deeper and deeper and deeper to where we can get it out of the rhizosphere, get it out of that area that the root system wants to be in. And once we get it out of that rhizosphere, the ability for salt to have an impact on the plant goes away. So we are not necessarily eliminating salt, right? We're not removing it from your soil. What we're doing is we're binding it to something that allows it to go a lot deeper in the soil, to where it's not going to be an issue for the plants that we're looking to grow here in the upper Midwest. So it is I would say it's not necessarily a quick fix, right? This isn't I have a huge salt issue and in one season it's going to go away. But from a program mentality, that's how we're going to look at it. So the pictures that you're seeing here, this is in Illinois. And what you're seeing on the left-hand side is the untreated versus the right-hand side, which is the treated, and the ability to be able to push that salt down deeper and get it out of the rhizosphere. So I've talked a lot about the technology itself, how it works and what it does, but now I want to switch a little bit more into the nuts and bolts of just what is the program? What does it look like? And as all things biological, it's certainly more of an art more than maybe a science. There's no, this is the absolute way you have to do it. But this is where we've found the biggest bang for the buck comes on a program basis. So we are recommending to apply 1 quart of our product, NutriPhi, in the fall as soon as possible after your harvest. Now, if you can, we would recommend that you put 2 to 3 gallons of liquid UAN with that. That serves 2 purposes. It's a little bit of a food source for the bacteria, gets them hyper, gets them active, right? But the other reason that we're doing that is it helps to balance out that carbon to nitrogen ratio for that residue that's on top of the surface, right? We're putting a little hint of nitrogen on that residue to get our C to N ratio in balance, and then we're bringing in all the bugs that can come and then chew that down and digest it down as quickly as possible. So that is a really simple program. Now, if you have areas or if you have fields that are just way overloaded with residue and you want to speed that process up, you can certainly go heavier. If you have fields where it's maybe you have just a minimal amount of field trash left over and you're not really looking to spend the full amount, you can certainly do that as well. But in our opinion, the 1 quart per acre is the best bang for the buck, and that's what the trial was done on when we saw that 25% reduction.
Hey Josh, quick
Yeah.
question. Can you mix water with that? I mean, 2 to 3 gallons is getting where my sprayer, I'm gonna have a little bit of trouble getting that low. Blend some water with that to
Yes, we would highly encourage you to put water with it then to just, whatever it takes to get coverage across the acre is what you're going to want to put. So a lot of the guys will go out there with maybe 6 to 8 gallons of water per acre, somewhere in there, just to make sure we can get coverage across the field. But
run a 10-gallon acre mixed in and I'm good to go.
Exactly.
And then how long, next question, like how long should I wait? Or is there any time you want us to wait before we do tillage after we spray?
You can follow up immediately with tillage. That's not a big deal. The bacteria, once you spray them down, here's the thing, these are spore forming bacteria. All right. And I didn't talk too much about this, but it takes 10 months to produce these bacteria. And that's one of the things that we think really separates us from other products is we are produced in big cold fermentation outdoor vats down in Texas. And it takes 10 months to go through the heat, the drought, the rain, the dust, all of those things that normal or real world bacteria would have to go through. And then we bottle up the strongest of those species that survive. So when we put them back into the soil, we know we have a very high survival rate. But the other really cool part about that is these are spore forming bacteria, which have the ability to lay a bunch of eggs, for lack of a better term, right? So we're harvesting all the spores that were created over that 10 months as well. So when you apply this product to your field, those spores have the ability of multiplying very quickly. In fact, one of the things that we've done is on our NutriQuire with dust, which is the sister product to this in terms of the technology. On the NutriQuire dust terracin product, we saw a 10-fold increase in our bacteria populations within 12 hours. Now, obviously, the dust was a nice food source for us to be able to do that with. But we would expect a similar thing when you apply these bacteria to your soil, is that they're going to repopulate very quickly. So coming in and doing tillage work right after you apply it, no big deal. I think it's a great option.
Okay, thanks. Because
No problem.
I could pull the dang chisel plow with a sprayer if they could. They want to be there right there. So.
Exactly. Yes.
You got another question there, Josh.
Go ahead.
Jared?
Sorry, I had to make sure I had my mic on. Josh, I wanted to ask you about putting down NutriPhi after wheat for double crop soybeans in terms of herbicide remediation. I think it's the sulfones or something like that I'm thinking of that we apply to weeds. Shame on me for not remembering. But how quickly would that remediate those process? Would that positively influence double crop beans on herbicide alone?
So that's a great question. I want to preface it because we take a lot of pride in being as reputable as possible with our information. I want to preface it by saying we have not specifically done a study on that, but what I can tell you through other things that we've done, for example, we've done work where we put NutriQuire down with a herbicide, and we've seen it on beans where that shock, they get over that herbicide shock a heck of a lot quicker because we're metabolizing the chemical residue a lot quicker. So my instinct would be, NutriPhi is the cousin product to NutriQuire. my instinct would be that if you put this down following wheat on a double crop situation, specifically to make sure that you don't have as much of an impact on that leftover chemical residue, that you would be pretty pleased with the results that you got. Not to mention the fact that you're going to get some, some of the other benefits as far as the phos solubilization and the nitrogen fixing as well. So I think that's a really good option for your growers. That's one I hadn't even thought about that much, Jared. So kudos to you for thinking about it.
And I was also thinking about PPOs as well, pre-emergence PPOs.
Yeah. We have some guys that do spray with the PPOs, and they do that for a couple of reasons. One, just to seed down the acre in general before the crop's even planted. But yeah, it would be a perfectly viable option to do that as well. So again, putting a number to this, right? So we talked about that 25% reduction. And then unlocking that fertilizer value. This is a little bit old. This was from August 30th, so it's a couple months old now. But at that time, it was about $40 worth of nutrient that we were putting back into the soil to be available right away at that spring planting time. Now, just because we plant a crop doesn't mean these guys stop working, right? So you're still going to get that remediation throughout the course of the summer as well. In fact, it'll be even more because the temperatures will be warm enough. So, we stopped at the planting time, but I imagine that $40 value is going to go up even more as you continue to unlock residue throughout the course of the growing season as well. And then some of the things that we can't, necessarily put a value on today, what we're going to keep working on trying to figure out what that is, but improving the seedling bed and then obviously improving the germination. If we can move some of that trash and get it out of our way, we run less risk of having things impacting germination and just creating an overall better seedling bed for that crop to emerge out of. And then last but not least, we talked about this before, the pathogen pressure, right? If we can start to take away some of that residue where that pathogen likes to reside, that's a big deal. But we're also allowing our bacteria to consume a lot of the food source that the negative bacteria or the pathogenic fungi and bacteria want to consume on their own. So in a roundabout way, we can start to starve them out a little bit as well. So those are some other kind of added benefits that you're going to see by doing the program as well. Okay, so that was the crop residue side of it. I'm going to pause just for a minute for any other questions, and then I'm going to spend the last 10 to 15 minutes here looking at kind of organic waste when it comes to manure management. And then I know Megan's on the line here if she has any questions about some of the industrial lagoons that we're treating as well. But I see there's a hand up here. Jared, I think it's you.
Yeah, Josh, I just had one more question.
Sure.
When it comes to the fertilizer value of this, the 25, 12, 52 pounds of K2Os, things like that, do you think it'd be best to credit the immediate fertilizer program that we're putting down or count it as a bonus or a gravy to be picked up on the next soil test and worked into the program at that point?
I would count it as a bonus to be counted in for the following season's credit there. I get nervous telling guys to back off an NP and K. Now, if they feel pretty confident, after year one, if they see that benefit and they feel confident on it moving ahead, certainly welcome to do that. But I've always been a proponent of if we can put the right nutrient down that's plant available, it's going to get used by the crop pretty quickly. And there's days where that crop wants nutrient that does not have access to. So I would use it as a little bit of a bonus and bank it up if it were me. That's how I would do it, at least initially.
Thank you, sir.
No problem. Any other questions on the crop side of it before we switch to manure management?
Josh, this is Dan. Real quick, what would we anticipate if a guy can't get this down in the fall for various reasons? What might we expect from a numbers or effectiveness in the spring, and what kind of time frame before plant?
Yeah, that's a good question. In Wisconsin, for example, a lot of guys are going to do this in the spring because it's a very common program to go down with the burn down program in the spring there. This is a natural fit. Especially if you're already going out and doing a burn down in the spring, this is a great fit for two reasons. One, it helps the herbicide kind of get to where it needs to go more effectively. The bacteria, in a sense, become the carrier of that. But number two, you get you're kind of seeding down that whole acre with the NutriPhi to continue to digest down that chemical residue, that carbon that's left over in the field. And last but not least, you're kind of already starting to lay the foundation for when you do go plant that next crop, that we're already having some positive microbial interactions that are happening in the soil, you know, in terms of end fixing and fossil solubilizing and some of those things. So what would we expect from a, you know, a value prop on that? We haven't specifically looked at, you know, the spring versus the fall. But I would say that, you know, just overall, you're going to see a pretty good ROI there just from the 2 or 3 things I just mentioned. Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to keep moving along here for the last 10 minutes or so. So the actually, and I kind of did this backwards because NutriPhi for manure management was really where this started. We've treated a whole bunch of swine buildings. We've treated a whole bunch of dairy lagoons. We've treated cattle feedlots. We've treated cattle confinements. We've treated poultry buildings to knock down ammonia. We've treated industrial lagoons. We've treated city municipalities. I mean, you name it. If it's an organic waste, we've probably treated, you know, something very similar to it, if not it itself. So, so as we look at it in terms of manure management, again, what is it? It's a powerful mixture of bacteria designed for beef, dairy, hog, and then, you know, any other livestock operation that produces manure. But as we look at it in beef, dairy, and hog, some of the big advantages that we're looking at is digesting down and suspending solid accumulations, right? So if you think of a swine building, we have the ability to digest down a lot of that solid accumulation that had happened on the bottom of the pit, and we get it into suspension. So you get a lot more even, consistent nutrient from top to bottom. You don't have this sludge buildup on the bottom of the pit. Same with a dairy lagoon. When it comes to a cattle confinement, I will caution you, cattle manure is extremely thick and is extremely stiff, and you're not going to liquefy necessarily cattle manure if it's straight cattle manure, if they're not putting any water in there. But what we do is we loosen it up a lot, so you still can get an agitator in there, get it pumped up and get it out. Obviously, if we do that, we're increasing the capacity of the pit or of the lagoon, which is a big deal for a lot of growers right now. How do you make sure you don't have to go rezone or re-permit a new lagoon or a new facility? Keeping capacity is critical. When we look at swine buildings in particular, fly populations are a big deal. If we can digest down the crust and the solid accumulation on top of that swine pit, we take away the surface area for them to lay their larvae. Once we take away that surface area, it takes about 2 fly cycles to crash the populations, you know, roughly 14 or so days. And we can start to see a crash in that population just because they don't have the surface area to continue to lay their eggs and repopulate. We can improve the air quality around the manure building, right? So that comes in a couple different ways. One is we've talked about the ability of nitrogen fixing bacteria. We have bacteria in here that will capture ammoniated off-gassing, and basically it captures it and converts it to a more stable form. So that's going to improve the air quality. We have bacteria in here that will reduce the form of sulfur. So as you look at hydrogen sulfide, we can reduce it down to a non-hazardous version of sulfur that, again, is more valuable to your field, but right out of the gate is going to be noticed in the air quality. And then the other big part of it is if we create a more liquid manure when it comes to agitation and stirring it, we're not kicking up as much of that off-gassing as we would have if you had to really beat the heck out of it to get the manure out of the pit. So big difference here in air quality. I will tell you that's going to become a bigger and bigger deal. So the EPA has already announced that they're going to start, they call it investigating CAFO operations. And the original place that they're starting is with water, right? On just what are you putting in a manure pit that is going to go into potentially into a creek or something at some stage. But you better believe if they're starting to investigate CAFO operations, air quality is going to be a very quick follow-up to water quality, just because they're gonna hammer on that, I think. One thing to note is this product is EPA open water discharge certified. So if the EPA does put restrictions in on what you can and can't use in manure management programs, we have already skirted around that by getting that certification done. We can improve the nutrient value of manure, right? So we talked about capturing that nitrogen or the ammoniated blow off. We talked about, reducing that hydrogen sulfide down to a more stable form of sulfur. All of those things add to a just more valuable nitrogen when we take it out to the field. So it's not only are you allowing the nutrients to be more usable when you take them to the field, but you're actually bringing more of the nutrients to the field, right? So when we think about a stabilizer, for example, big believer in stabilizers are great. But if you use a stabilizer at the end of the season in a hog building or a dairy lagoon, you're stabilizing the existing nitrogen that's there. When you use a product like NutriPhi, we're actually increasing the level of NP and K that is in the nitrogen that's in the actual lagoon. So two different kind of modes of action there. So those are kind of the big benefits as you look at using this in a lagoon or a hog pit or potentially a cattle confinement. So what are some of the features with this product? It is easy to use. It's a liquid product. It's a very concentrated formula. It does have a multi-year shelf life because it's spore-forming bacteria. It's 100% safe, no chemicals, harsh ingredients, and it's very cost-effective. So the biggest thing here, guys, is that it's safe. So when we look at using this in a hog building or a dairy lagoon, we want to make sure there's no negative impact on the people handling the product or the animals that are around it. In fact, we've literally sprayed poultry buildings with birds in the building, and there's no negative impact to the animal. It's completely benign. So really, really easy product to use. So what does it look like from the application rate, and how do you apply it? So on the dairy lagoon, it's a little bit more intricate on dairy, just because, depending on what part of the country, and lagoons freeze up. So we go by head of animal just to make it easy. You could probably go by gallons of the lagoon. Roughly 100 head of cows is about a 1 million gallon lagoon, roughly is what it works out to be. So if you have 100 head size herd that feeds into a lagoon, you're going to use 30 gallons of our product a year, which is about 2.5 gallons per month application. Now, if you're in an area where that lagoon's going to freeze up pretty solid, and you're not going to get a lot of microbial activity in the winter, and you do some pumping in the spring, I would suggest that you hold off and you cram that 30 gallons into the warm weather months, which is March through November-ish, somewhere in there. And that way you make sure you maximize your value. Now, I do have growers in Wisconsin that their inlet pipe that comes from the building into the lagoon is on the bottom third of the lagoon. So when the manure comes in, it's still warm enough. It stays warm all season long for microbial activity. And so they like to treat year round. But I would say if you have questions on that, certainly call me. I'm happy to kind of consult you on a case-by-case basis on those dairy lagoons. The easiest way to do it is to put it in the reception pit and let it work its way out from the reception pit into the lagoon with the manure. The only caveat I would say there is just be a little bit careful of what kind of chemicals are in that reception pit. If you're getting a lot of antimicrobial washdown that ends up in that reception pit and you only drain it once every week or so, antimicrobials are going to kill our bacteria. So that would be your one watch out about the reception pit. Otherwise, you can certainly spray it foliar over top of the lagoon when you apply the product. So fairly simple to do on a dairy lagoon, just a little bit more careful than on a hog building. When we go in the swine pit, it's really easy. We based it off a 2,400 head building, which seems to be kind of a standard for the swine industry. You just pop the cap and you walk down the center aisle and you pour it right through the floor slats. And you kind of pick, 3 or 4 locations throughout the length of the building there, and do that once a month. Really easy to do. If you have areas where you're going to get more crusting underneath feeders, the corners of the buildings, those types of things, you can certainly concentrate some of the product in that area more often than the other. But other than that, it's really easy to use in a hog building. Pop the cap, walk the aisle, pick 3 or 4 spots along the way, and pour it in once a month. 2,400 head building is a 2.5 gallon jug each month. So 30 gallons per year is roughly what it works out to be. So we have a little video that I will share with you guys. I'll have to narrate it for you guys on this one, but in livestock production, fresh manure is continually added to a storage pit or lagoon. Over time, solids do begin to accumulate on the bottom of the lagoon or the pit. These solids also trap important nutrients such as nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. NutriPhi contains specialized carbon-digesting bacteria designed to dissolve and suspend solid manure and nutrient accumulations evenly throughout the pit or the lagoon. Nitrogen off-gassing is another common issue found in manure storage pits. When nitrogen volatilizes off of manure pit, it impacts both the manure value and also the air quality around the pit. Nitrogen-fixing bacteria contained within NutriPhi have the ability to convert a portion of this nitrogen to a more stabilized form, resulting in less off-gassing and higher nitrogen levels in the manure. While there are many great manure handling benefits to using NutriPhi, the most obvious benefit may be its impact on fly populations. When surface crusts begin to form, flies begin to lay larvae on that crust and eventually lead to an explosion in populations. NutriPhi bacteria digest down the crust, resulting in a lack of surface area for flies to lay their larvae. Once flies can no longer lay larvae, it's only a matter of time before their populations begin to crash. So that's basically the video there, guys. Last thing I'll mention, because I know I'm short on time here, I got 1 minute left. In-field benefit, if you load that manure with our bacteria, in a way, you've become a bacteria manufacturing process. And now you're going to take all of these beneficial bacteria out to your field. And once they get out there, they don't stop working. They're going to continue to convert NP and K to usable forms. They're going to continue to digest down carbon. They're going to continue to help with chemical and nutrient residue management programs. All those beneficial things that we talked about by just applying NutriPhi to your field in general. You're going to get a lot of that benefit by putting it in your manure, allowing it to grow the populations and take it out to the field at the end of the year. So with that, I do want to thank you. I told Bob that I'd be done by 8:45, and I believe I finished about 30 seconds early. So I think if there's maybe one question or so, I may have time, but that'd be about it for today then.
Yeah, Josh, I just wanted to ask, not so much about Omri, but of like EcoCert or any other organic certifications we might have.
It is Omri certified. EcoCert, I don't think I have to double check, but Omri seems to be the gold standard across the world. So if you get Omri, you're pretty much good for anything else. So yeah, we do have Omri certification on it. Okay.
Gosh, there's a quick question in the queue.
Yep.
Can NutriPhi be applied with Valor now in Northern Illinois?
What's Valor? Educate me a minute.
Soybean PPO.
Oh yeah, yep, that'd be fine. Yep, absolutely. Okay. Well, thank you guys. I appreciate the opportunity. Newfield Ags, thank you guys for allowing me to continue to come on here and do these. And thank you everyone for joining today. And Michael, with that, I'll hand it back to you.
Yeah, Josh, thank you for this. And we'll invite you back for some other products and insights as we go forward through our weekly Wednesday webinar Fire Up trainings. And so at this time, we want to bring on Eric McCrae to visit about our financing for the farmer. Eric is from First Mid Bank. He's a senior lender, and he learned to drive a 40/20 tractor on the farm as he was growing up. And so I always like to understand either the tractor someone likes or the tractor that they learned on. And Eric's going to take a few minutes to go through and just kind of overview what our financing program is for the grower level as we go into these fall and winter early orders. So Eric, I'll let you kind of take it away here. Do you have anything you want to put up on the screen yourself yet?
Not yet, but I will shortly, if that's okay.
Okay.
Very good. Well,
I'll get you spotlighted here. All right.
All right. Very good. Thank you, Michael, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for letting me join the call this morning. As Michael said, I want to talk to you a little bit about the financing program, an extremely attractive program that NewFields Ag is offering for the 24 crop year. Before we get to that, though, I want to speak to you a little bit about interest rates, where they're at, what the forecasts are for the next 12 months, and really the view from my chair as an ag lender. First Mid, we're an ag bank, been around since 1865, been an ag lender for that entire time. And right now it's extremely interesting in terms of the economy, the economic data we're seeing, and how the Fed is reacting with their interest rates. So I will go ahead and share my screen if I could here really quickly. Okay. So I've got a lot of bullet points on this sheet, but the Fed meets every 6 weeks with their open market committee. The last meeting was last Wednesday, November 1st, and they left rates unchanged for the second meeting in a row. So the Fed funds rate is 5.5%, which means the national prime rate stays at 8.5% as well. The reasons they left the rates alone, a lot of it had to do with the weakness in the housing market and a slight weakening in the labor market as well. In fact, with that second bullet point there, 2 days after that Fed meeting, last Friday on the 3rd, Department of Labor released their jobs report, and it sort of supported what the Fed was indicating was one of their driving factors, in that unemployment was slightly higher than anticipated, and wage growth actually slowed. And it's the lowest reading we've had in about 2 years in the increase in the average salary. So that's positive information as far as the Fed is concerned with their interest rates. Market consensus is that maybe the Fed is actually finished with this raising the rates in this cycle. As a matter of fact, CME, they have a Fed Watch tool. Basically, it's a market for Fed funds rate. Right now, as of today, they're factoring in a 90% likelihood that the Fed will leave rates unchanged again when they meet December 13th. And there's about an 80% probability that they'll leave them alone when they meet again at the end of January. So everything that we're seeing from the meeting, from the comments afterwards, seems pretty dovish. Now, I have been watching some members of the Fed, some of the Fed bank presidents in the last week. They were quick to back away from any assurance that they're done increasing rates, and they state that they're taking it on a month-by-month basis in reading economic data. So fair enough, but the market thinks that they're done. And even if they are done, based on that CMA Fed Watch tool, every indication we're getting is that the Fed will most likely leave rates higher for longer. And what does that mean? If you look at the Fed's own predictions, which they predict rates out into the future every quarter, they're not predicting much of a decrease over the next 12 months. And in fact, some polls of economists in the CME, maybe 100 to 150 basis points less in rates, so 1 to 1.5% decrease in rates by the end of 24. Now, again, all bets are off. It's an interesting world we live in. The geopolitical issues, the Middle East, Russia, Ukraine, that's all still a factor in how it could impact various economies, U.S. and worldwide as well. Other data, as we watch with housing and jobs and the bond market even, could impact which way Fed would want to take rates. But as we're talking with our borrowers, our farm borrowers, as we're getting ready to set up those 24 operating lines, is every indication we have based on the information today is that we're going to look at these higher interest rates for another year. And so if you go back in time, 2 years ago today, the national prime rate was 3.25. A year ago today, it was 7. Today, it's 8.5. So, if you're borrowing working capital, you have an operating line on your farm and it's tied to prime, and you've had about 150% plus increase in your cost of money over the last 2 years. And, 20% increase even from 24 crop year to 23 crop year, assuming you're borrowing at prime or some factor tied to that benchmark rate. So as we're talking to our farmers about their operating line, and really whether it's for the 24 year or any other year, we talk about a couple things when it comes to borrowed working capital. First thing is look for opportunities to reduce the cost of that credit. All right, credit is a tool. It's a useful tool, but right now the cost of rent credit has increased dramatically over the last couple of years. So look for opportunities to rely less on your operating line if you can, and always try and maintain some amount of liquidity in your operation. If you have liquidity, it offers up the opportunity to make quicker and better management decisions in real time, rather than having to rely on borrowed capital. So liquidity reduce the need for borrowed working capital. So, what does that mean in terms of what we're here to talk about today? And, with the program that NewFields Ags has put forth for the 24 crop year, it's a 0% financing program. So for all applications received through January 12th of 24, it's 0% for the product financing. If you just decide to borrow money for the product, all these loans are due December 15th of 24. So at the end of the crop year, we have a 30-day grace period. So if how you want to manage your expenses and how it may impact your taxes, if you need to carry over into the next new year, that's fine with us. We understand how those things work. It's a very easy and convenient application process. Matter of fact, I'll go ahead and share again and just pull up this an example of what that application looks like. So if you're going to borrow $200,000 or less, this is it. It's about a half a page. It should only take you 10 minutes or less. You won't have to go dig through any of your financial information to fill this out. You just fill this out. You can do it. There's a link on NewFields website that'll take you right to this. You can do it all electronically, sign it with DocuSign and submit it. You can fill this in. It's fillable, and you can email it into us. You can snail mail it, fax it, however you want to get it to us. We'll accept it. But it's an easy, short application. We promise to get back to you within 48 hours. Usually it's within 24 hours that we can give you a decision on this. If it's in excess of $200,000, we'll ask for a little bit more information, a couple of years tax returns, and a few more questions on your balance sheet. But again, we can still get you that same 48-hour turnaround. And then if you decide to go with the financing and work with First Med, young lady who runs the program wasn't able to join us this morning, Sydney Spellman, but she is always available to answer questions and take care of any of your needs. I'm available as well. And then we have a customer call center that we're open 6 days a week, that our folks know the program inside and out and can answer any questions that you may have. So again, 0% financing as long as we get that application by January 12th. We also, between January 13th and May 1st, it's a prime minus 3.5. So today, based on the prime rate, that would be a 5% interest rate. And again, all loans come due December 15th. So Michael, I will stop there and see if there are any questions that I may be able to answer.
All right, Eric, great job. Thanks for the update on some of the financial going-ons out there in the marketplace, and I think that people are feeling the heat of this financing situation, and we've had a lot more interest this year in the program versus last year, and we think it'll continue to be that way. Just want to let everyone know that while we're offering 0% interest to the farmer, that comes at a cost to our company. Eric isn't just lending us money at 0%. And so actually NewFields Ag is taking the hit and stepping up and buying down that interest for the farmer to help incentivize and make that decision to work together with us all. And we're very thankful for this program that they brought out for us to work with you on and to work with your farmers on. So the 0% offer goes till January 12th, and with approvals up to 200,000 at the farm level. And it's real simple. It's a one-page document. You don't have to submit a lot of other paperwork. And so they're very quick to make this happen. And we've had some farmers take advantage of this, and it's worked real well for them. So we know it could work well for many more farmers. So Eric, thanks for your time, and we'll invite you or Sydney back on in some of our other meetings for as we go forward until we get through this January 12th date. So thank you for your time. And if there's any other questions, everyone, just hop on here. You're welcome to stay afterwards. We'll conclude the meeting for now. But anyone who wants to stay on afterwards, we can chat after we shut down or end the recording.